Hello, Miss Steele here. This week we are talking about texture. So we're going to be doing a texture study for this project. So we're really going to be focusing in on the texture of something. You want a piece of paper, a pencil and an eraser, colored pencils because they definitely work best for getting texture. I have a sharpener for my colored pencils. And then you want to find an item that has texture. That item is kind of up to you. I looked around my room and tried to find some different things with texture so I could give you some examples. A piece of cardboard. I found a feather. I found this really cool piece of cork. It's like a lid for something. I don't know what for. I really liked this eraser. It's been poked by students, but that kind of made a new texture on it as well as all the drawing on it. And then I found some seashells as well. So I just looked around and I wanted to give you some examples. Yours might be a shoe or something else, but you want to find one thing that has texture, and we're going to try to recreate that texture. I'm going to turn the brightness down just a little bit. So after looking at all these items, I think I'm going to use a feather. I think I'm going to try to recreate this feather texture. Yours might be different than mine. You might not have a feather laying around. But you want to find something that has an interesting texture that you want to practice. This isn't going to be perfect, but we want to try it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my feather right up here so I can look at it. If you wanted to tape it down, you definitely could so it doesn't move around as much. And then I'm going to try to recreate this texture in my open space down here. So I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to get the general shape. You can draw it the exact same size if you want, or you can draw it a little bit smaller. So really lightly, all I'm doing is trying to get the shape. If the shape isn't perfect, that's okay, because the important part here is trying to recreate that texture. So right now I'm trying to draw this middle line, so then I can go back and start adding in the feather strokes. And even this has some texture to it. It's like bigger on the sides, a little bit skinnier in the middle. And now I'm going to grab out some different reds. Although this is only one color of red, I think if I use a few different reds, it'll help push that texture even more. So I'm going to pull out some red colored pencils because this is red, and get them sharpened, and then we're going to start working on the texture. Again, you might not be using a feather. You might be doing something else. But I'm showing you how I'm focusing in on the texture of this and trying to recreate it so you can practice that for your item as well. So I'm going to get out some red color pencils, get them sharpened, and then we'll move on to our next step. I've got my colored pencils, and I'm going to start, let me refocus this, coloring this in. I see that it's a little bit deeper on the sides, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this deeper red color I have to go along the edges to help that edge texture that it has. And then I'm going to color it in red, but it's a little bit deeper on the edges. So I'm adding in this darker color to make it look like it's a little bit deeper. Again, you'll be using maybe not a feather, a different item, but you're just really focusing in on what different textures, shapes, and colors are there. I'm going to go back and I'm going to color this in red, and we're going to have the stem of our feather, and then I'm going to start adding in the sides of the feather. I don't know what they're called. So I'm going to get this colored in. I made it a little bit darker on the edges like I said earlier, and then now I have like the base of this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to try to go back and recreate the texture that I'm seeing of that feather, which are all these strokes right next to each other. And that's going to be my feather texture. You might have something that has a different texture. Like if I was doing a seashell, I might be using like lines to create the texture on the side. If I was using this cardboard, I might be using a darker color and then a lighter color. If I was using this cork, I might be trying to follow along those lines to create the texture. So that's kind of up to you. I chose a feather, and so I'm going to try to recreate these feather lines, and I'm doing that using a lot of just straight lines right next to each other. And I'm going to go back with this other red to add in some more strokes just so I can really push that feather texture. If you can't find something that has texture that you really like, you can try to look up a picture of something even could help. But I like to have it in front of me, so that's what I'm doing for mine. And I might have to resharpen this as I go, so I can get those really sharp lines from my feather. I'm going to go through and I'm going to keep working on these feather lines on this side. And then we're going to go in and use that darker color to add in even more feather lines to kind of push that texture a little bit. Kind of has a little space right here. So I'm going to keep working on this side of my feather. And then we're going to use this to add in some darker feather strokes, and then I'll finish this next side as well. So we're talking about texture, and I'm trying to recreate the texture on this the best that I can. If it's not perfect, that's okay. We're still learning. Then adding some more strokes, and I'm working on this fluffy part on the bottom. So what I'm doing on the ends of these is I'm adding even more lines, kind of coming out in all sorts of directions of these, because it kind of has these like crazy sort of fluffy ends. So I'm also thinking about even what kind of different textures are being made on this feather, because this looks different than what I have up here. These ends are a little fluffier. They have a little more line to them. You can go back in and layer on for texture too. That can help. Texture is really about taking it slow, adding in those line details so you can help push it even more. So I'm going back and I'm adding in even more. Being mindful, of course. I'm not just slopping it on wherever. And I have the start of this. So what I can do now is I can use my other red and I can go in and add in some more. I broke it. But I can go in and add in some more, and using a slightly different red or a slightly different color than whatever your item that has texture is can help push that texture a little bit more by using some different values in there. I'm going to go get this sharpened and I'll be back. Alright, so I'm going to be using a little bit of this deeper red to add in some more feather lines in here. Taking my time, kind of following what I've already created. Because once you have like those few lines down and you have some lines down for your shape, you can really go in and start pushing that texture once it starts looking real nice. Again, I don't expect yours to be perfect. Mine's not perfect. We're just experimenting with texture, and that's kind of like the fun of it, is like building our art skills and looking at those things that do have different kinds of textures. And even if it doesn't look exactly like what it is, you're still experimenting and practicing that and growing as an artist. That's kind of how it works. It's really cool. So I'm going to keep working on this feather for a second longer, and then we'll look at it once it's complete, and then we'll have our item with texture. Again, you can use whatever you may have around the house. You're just trying to practice that texture and looking at the shapes that are created and the lines, which we've talked about shape and line already, as well as color, which is why I'm using a few different colors in here, because I think it helps kind of push the texture. I'm even going in and making it a little bit thicker along here on the bottom because it's thicker, and I think it needs to be that way, so you can look at those kind of details. So I'm going to keep working on my feather, and then we'll look at it once it's finished. So I went back and added some more in. I could even go along here, and I'm going to color it a little bit deeper with the red to help like the texture of like, I guess the stem of the feather. I don't really know what this part's called. But I'm going to consider that done. It's definitely not exactly like this, but like I said, it's like experimenting and trying that kind of like helps us increase our art skills and become better artists. And that's why we're practicing this texture. So you can use whatever you find around your house that you like. I'm sorry, I'm crazy just going in and adding in some more to kind of help it. Okay, I'm going to be done. I'm going to be done. So there is my textural feather. Again, I just grabbed some random stuff from around my room, so you can use whatever you find. I will see you all next time. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, your evening, your afternoon, whenever you're watching this. I can't wait to see how your texture items come out. Bye!